Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM, WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM, WBNY.
WBNY Buffalo.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of 91.3 FM WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about today's program, you can give us a call at 716-878-5104.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy Breitbart.
Welcome to Breitbart. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And, of course, our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We're also here with Norm McCarter, who's our in-studio audience of one. Welcome, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare, and good morning, sir.
All right, and we're also here with our IT genius, Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan Hare. Make sure you guys call us, 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104.
And of course, we can't let go of this evolving tragedy. I don't even know if I don't really have good words to describe what is going on.
When you say evolving tragedy, is that the Palestine Israel thing?
Yes.
It can before you. I love to cut you off, but before you start,
you got opinions, right?
I do. But before I always have some pressing urgency for something. I was doing Uber, driving a student. I think UB College, one of those college.
Mm-hmm.
I overheard her talk to her friend, schoolmate, somebody. Oh yeah, my teacher, I wore my Palestinian wrap, and he got on my case. Said no politics, something like don't be political here, and told her to go out of the class.
Right.
I heard that, and I started to steam up.
And treating her wearing a Palestinian scarf, which is an ethnic.
Okay, that's what it was.
Right.
Right.
That's an ethnic, garment.
Right.
You see me wearing a kufi.
Right.
You see me wearing a dashiko.
Right.
You've seen that for 45 years.
Right.
Yeah. That's not a political expression.
Right.
That's me just living like an African person because guess what? I'm an African person.
Right.
So I walk like, talk like, act like, dress like, eat like an African person.
Right.
She's dressing like a Palestinian person because she's a child of Palestinian parents.
Right.
She's just ethnically reflecting what is her norm. For her teacher to say to her that it is political.
In a college.
At college.
At college.
Well, remember, you didn't say that when Ron DeSantis said, you know what I mean? You all sat on your hands. Your hands all got flat, because you were sitting on your hands and so on. You didn't have anything to say about that. Yeah. But this is where it goes. When you don't challenge this stuff at the beginning, then you wind up someplace else at the end that you didn't want to be. That's what's going on right now.
Let me just add, Mr. Hare, with this being said, in college, this is the expression place. This is pretty much especially for young
That's
students.
not what the conservatives and the Republicans say.
Right.
They say college is a place for you to go learn stuff that will enable you to get a job.
But traditionally, expression.
No. Traditionally they want you to learn something that'll help you to get a job. Okay. Everything you're doing that does not prepare you to get a job in the United States is radical. It's a distortion of college. That's how they think.
Wow.
Okay.
I know that's ugly, but that's what's going on.
So now, so are you saying, Mr. Hare, that teacher might have been in the right? And as a matter of fact, I told her, I heard. I'm sorry, dear. I was listening to your conversation, but what your teacher did was wrong. I felt unprofessional. I think you should report him. That's what I told her.
She should, because the teacher was wrong. You have a right to your thoughts.
Right.
You have a right to speak your thoughts. Now, you don't have a right to hit somebody else with your thoughts.
Right.
You can't turn your thoughts into a bullet
Right.
and smack somebody with it.
Right.
But you can have an opinion. You can say, well, they killed 1,000, Israeli citizens last week, and they've killed 14,000 Palestinians. Who's going to help the Palestinians? Oh, can't talk like that. That's wrong.
Right.
I had a conversation with my wife about this, and it helps us to understand. We live in the same house. Mm-hmm. We watch the same TV. Mm-hmm. We eat the same food.
Right.
We sleep in the same bed.
Right.
Everything we do in common.
Right.
She's listening to the TV as I'm listening to the TV, but her head is hearing something different than what my head is hearing.
Wow.
When she listens to the TV, she says, "Yeah, they're getting those Palestinians, and they did horrible people and whatnot. They're going to get them." And I said, "Well, honey, the Palestinians didn't attack Israel. The Hamas militants attacked Israel, not the Palestinian people. Well, they're going to get it. They're coming at them right now." Yeah. And I said, "Well, what about the civilians? What about the people? I mean, we lived in a time period, you all didn't live it, but we lived in a time period where you had gangs that were marauding in neighborhoods in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't come and kill everybody in the Maston district because you had a gang in the Maston district that was attacking people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You would use your policing and whatever other investigative powers and enforcement powers that you have to go. If you had to go house to house, you would try to find whoever the perpetrators are and then do something with those perpetrators. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't punish the people who lived in the neighborhood where the perpetrators lived. That would not make any sense. Okay. That's what Israel is doing right now. Israel is attacking all of the people in Palestine. All of the the Gazan Palestinians is attacking all of them, every single one of them right now. They're waging war against all of them. Now don't take me at, I know y'all think that I got, issues and whatnot. And I may have issues. But I want you to hear this in the words. This is Yoav Gallant. He's in Israel's defense minister. He used these words, his words. He ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, which is home to 2.2 million Palestinian people. Nearly half of them are children under the age of 17. Mm. He said, quote, "There will be no electricity. There'll be no food. There'll be no fuel. Everything is closed. We're fighting human animals, and we act accordingly."
Mm. Mr.
So if you're acting accordingly, I just want to make this point. If he's acting accordingly, then that means that he's acting like a human animal too. Yeah. If they're human animals who did this, and you're doing this to 2.2 million Palestinian people, you are also acting like a human animal. Go ahead, Norm.
Okay, Mr. Hare. First of all, I send prayers to the people along the Gaza Strip. And now we are, I'd like to say I know that we are allies with Israel. But with that being said, there are rules to war. But in war, we're always going to have collateral damage. I don't this guy that's not the guy you just mentioned, you know, that to me, I look at it almost as war crimes. You cannot just totally not care about the women and children and people who aren't involved in this. You know, you have to. I think you have to. If we're doing this, we got to do it fair and we got to do it in a correct order.
Norm, I'm glad you stuck in that little tag-on phrase, the people who are not involved, because I object to the constant characterization that the victims are women and children. You have men that live in Palestine.
That probably work. And
those men are masons, they're carpenters, they're shopkeepers, they're farmers, they're wine, grape growers and so on. They didn't commit these crimes.
Yes, sir.
They just have families and kids and everything that everybody else has. Why is it always okay to kill the men in an area, but it's not okay to kill the women?
No, not at all. It's
right?
not
but,
okay.
but we always say that. So
yeah.
I mean, and this script has been running for hundreds of years. So it's ingrained in everybody's mind.
Yeah.
Oh, women and children, women and children. No, you should not be killing any of these people who are innocent people, period. You should not be doing that. I need for you to understand that since this Israeli-Palestinian thing came about, for every 15 people that were killed in this conflict, 13 plus of those people were Palestinians. 1.5 of those people were Israelis. That has been going on since the beginning of this thing in 1948. So if it's the Palestinians who are being pummeled at 7 to 8 times as much as the Israelis, who is it that we should be advocating for? What is it that we should be trying to get solved? Is it the solution? Remember, the Palestinians did not take Israel from Israel. The Palestinians did not take the promised land from Israel. The Assyrians took the northern kingdom of Israel, conquered it, and it stopped being Israel from that day forward. That was in 721 BC. BC, 2,800 years ago. 2,800 years ago, the Assyrians took Israel out of the promised land, and they ceased to exist as a country. There's never been a country until 1948 that was called Israel, not one. So therefore, how can you be fighting a war of liberation for a place that you didn't even live in?
Man.
You weren't even part of the show. I'm saying this. I accept the reality that Palestine has been conquered by the Americans and the British and the Germans and so on after World War II. They just took Palestine and said, this is ours, and we're going to give half of it, to create the state of Israel. I don't think that was a right thing to do. I think that was a very horrible, wrong thing to do to people who lived in that land. People who 750,000, this is in 1948, in just that 1 year, 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from the land of Israel that became Israel. 750,000 of them were expelled and just told, well, you could go go live someplace else. No job, no house, no hospital, no water, just expelled. That's how Israel began. It began by seizing half of the Palestinian territory. Israel didn't do it. I mean, it wanted to do it. It cooperated in doing it. The Americans, the allied, powers, they're the ones who did this. So they did that to give Israel space. I get it. Israel needed space to live in where they could be Jewish and nobody would bother them. I get that. Why that price had to be paid by the Palestinians who had not done that to the Jewish people, I don't get that. Why did the price have to come from them? If you just had to do it to create a space for the Jewish people, why didn't you take that space out of Germany? Germany were the ones who did the crime. Why weren't they the ones who paid the price for the crime?
Yeah.
That's one side of it. The reality is that that's 70 years ago, right? Am I saying that right? 75 years ago, since 1947. So that already has occurred. We can't change what has occurred. So we can say, as I say, that what occurred was wrong, but it occurred 70-something years ago. I can't do anything about that. So I get that. I think the Palestinians are going to have to eat that. I know that's ugly. I know it's ugly, but they got to eat it because that was 78 years ago.
Yeah.
You got to start asking yourself right now, I got a wife. I got 6 kids. I got a farm. I got donkeys. I got a couple of camels. How do I protect the things that are important to my life and the life of my people? That's the fight that the Palestinians should be raising. That's the fight that the Americans should be raising. The Americans should be on that side, not necessarily on the side of the Palestinians, but on the side of right and wrong. But we're not. We've been on the side of people doing wrong year in and year out. Right now, as we speak, there are 300,000 Palestinians in Gaza who have been driven from their homes, who can't leave the Gaza Strip. This is the thing I was trying to get my wife to understand. She felt, well, I saw that 300,000, the Palestinians, they were allowed to free passage, to leave. Honey, there's no place on earth called Hamas land. It's not like they're getting people to leave from Hamas land. The Gaza Strip is the Gaza Strip. They can't leave the Gaza Strip because the Israelis have put a perimeter, a military border around the Gaza Strip so that the Palestinians, if they wanted to leave, can't leave. In addition to that, and this is for Willie, because Willie's the contrarian, right? Yeah. This is for Willie. Yeah. The Egyptians don't want, and they border the Gaza Strip. The Egyptians don't want any of the Palestinians to leave Gaza Strip and become refugees in Egypt. Guess why? Because you'd have to put up refugee camps. You had to put up toilets. You had to put up hospitals. You had to put up schools. You had to bring food. Right? And so they say, well, why should we have to pay that burden? We didn't do it. The Lebanese. Wow. We don't want that. Saudi Arabia. Y'all stay over there. Wow. Right? Everybody over there that's got all their mouth in the game about how they feel about the Israeli-Palestinian situation, everybody over there shares the guilt. Because if they had all stood up, and if they would stand up right now for the Palestinians, they could provide safety and provide the ability to create an economy, a life structure for the Palestinians where they could erect themselves as people, not political people, but real human beings, to erect themselves so that they can live, eat, have medical care, and all the things that human beings want in their lives. But the Arab so-called, friends of the Palestinians, they're not helping. I just thought that you all being citizens would want to know that.
Well, let me just add.
Obviously, I have an attitude about this. Right?
I understand, Mr. Hare, your point. I'm just looking at the situation, and in this situation, I feel for the Palestinians. They're trapped. They're trapped. Right. They're like mice in a cave. But and they're being subject to a very, very slow, systematic eradication. They're just basically just being taken out. In a different kind. And like you say, they don't care about
this used to be slow eradication. What's going on right now in Israel is genocide.
Basically what I'm saying.
If you have to go, ask yourself if it's just you by yourself. If you had to go 6 days with no food, no water, no shelter, no clothes, nothing. You had to go 6 days, no food, no water, no shelter. How alive are you going to be when 6 days goes by?
Not very well.
More than likely, you're going to be dead, right?
Yeah.
So if you do something that over the course of a 5 or 6 day period would kill 30 or 40 or 50% of the people in the Gaza Strip, how is that not genocide?
I agree with you, Mr. Hare, but let me come up with, I'd like to just add this. We are supposed to be the most humane
Who's we? See, Willie, he come up with these pronouns again.
Okay. The United States is supposed to be, and now we are in an election year. People are looking negatively at Biden. Not particularly, I dig Biden. You know what I mean, myself. But this is the time for Biden, even though we are allied with the Israelis, to come up with something where you kind of meet in the middle and you do something to elevate yourself. This is the time.
I hear you. What happens is if Biden says anything a positive about trying to create a better reality for the Palestinians, he would be accused of being an anti-Semite.
Right.
He'd be accused of being anti-Jewish. So every word you heard come out of Biden's mouth. Now, he's the captain of the guard of the America, greatest country on earth and whatnot, right? So you would think you would get order from America. But Biden says, we're doing everything. We're supporting. We're all in. We got Israel's back. We're all in for Israel. Israel, right? That's what he's saying nothing about the Palestinians. Why is that? Why is it that the Palestinians are the ones, and I'm not talking about Hamas, just like I'm not talking about the Communist Party in China, or the Politburo in Russia,
right,
or the Boko Haram, in Nigeria. I'm not talking about them. Those are people who are doing criminal things, are criminal people.
Right.
But I'm not judging the Nigerians and punishing the Nigerians because Boko Haram is based in Nigeria. I'm going to try to find the Boko Haram people and take them out. But I'm not going to try to hurt the Nigerian people, at least to the extent that I can not hurt them. That's the way I'm going to go. In the Palestinian situation, the Palestinian people as a people, they're not the ones attacking Israel. They're the victims of Israel. Israel and its agents stole half the land of Palestine and have possessed it for over 75 years and have driven over 1 million Palestinians into starvation, into poverty. They're doing this right now. This is being done now. And on top of that, now they've already driven 300,000 Palestinians. They intend to drive 1.2 million Gazan Palestinians, intend to drive them out of their homes, told them that they should move to the south. Move where in the south? Every place in Palestine is policed by the Israeli military. So all they would be doing is huddling themselves into one corner of Palestine, hoping that somebody will send them some manna from heaven, and then have the Israelis kill them, like fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
That's the reality that is going on right now. Why isn't Joe Biden on that reality?
Yeah.
Because he knows he can't sell it to the American public.
Right.
If the American public heard him talking like I'm talking right now, the American public would impeach Joe Biden for having bad thoughts. What was your crime? You had a bad thought.
Well, you know what? When you really look at it, and as we speak often, everything, like we always say, boils down to self-interest. And it wouldn't be.
Thank you.
It wouldn't be in his best interest if he were to do anything about this particular situation. And even though that's something that I offered, I never thought of the reference of him being monitored as an anti-Semite. And they would. I'm sure they would.
And just think about it. I'm saying this about Joe Biden, but the alternative to Joe Biden is Matt Gaetz and whoever these Gomar and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Those are the alternatives. If you don't have Trump, if you don't have Biden, then you got Trump and these other people who are even much worse, right? So that's the position that we are in. African people, in my view. African people, particularly Africans who live in the United States, should be the champions of freedom everywhere on earth, should be the champions of human rights every place on earth.
Yeah.
If there's anybody on this planet who understands the consequence of people not respecting other people as human beings, it's African American people.
Absolutely.
Where is our mouth? Where are we in this conversation? We're running around here parroting the same nonsense that's being talked about by Joe Biden. That's not going to take us home. That's not where we need to be. We need to stand with humanity. We should be saying to Israel, we accept that you stole this land, and now you all have conquered it, and you're there now. We can't do anything about that. But we can do something about all these Palestinian people that don't have jobs, that don't have houses, that don't have medical care. Go ahead.
Mr. Hare, that's the point I was trying to make. It's not even about how you're looked at or how President Biden is looked at. Rise above that, help these people, and explain that you're in a situation where you're just doing the right thing. This is what you are supposed to do as the leader of the free world.
And
really.
it's not anti-Israeli, it's not anti-Jewish, it's not anti-Semitic to be for people having a place to live.
Yes, sir.
To have medical care, to have food, to have jobs. That's not anti-Semitic, right? And we should not allow people to imprison us in their words. They turned this into a thing where it was Israel against Palestine when it was Israel against Hamas. Hamas is an organization. It's not the people of Palestine. It just seems to me that the American media does not do this, does not speak about this in a way that is honest and that is moral. All they do is they talk about all of the Palestinians. In fact, today was the first depiction I've seen of any of the Palestinian people that have been hurt by the Israelis. They've been telling you all day long for the last 6 or 7 days in a row all about all of the things that have happened to Israelis. They never even say the words Palestinians. They talk about men, women, and children and others. The men are just others if they get talked about at all. What they talk about is all of the horror that is visited upon these Israelis. It is horror what was visited upon them. The fact that these Hamas people chopped off the heads of some Israeli children and Israeli adults, the fact that that occurred doesn't mean that I'm going to judge Palestinians for that. I'm going to judge Hamas for that.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you for explaining that, Mr. Hare.
See? So yes, you're not supposed to be raping anybody. You're not supposed to be chopping off anybody's heads or their hands and so on. That should not get done.
So the Palestinian people are going to suffer for what Hamas did.
They are suffering.
Suffering for what
They're
Hamas
suffering
did.
right now.
Okay.
These Palestinians, there was a guy I listened to on the radio this morning before I came down for the show, and he was talking about the fact that you have hospitals. They don't have many hospitals in the Gaza Strip. They have about 2,500 hospital beds. He was talking about a child who was on a what do you call those respirators, those things they put people with COVID-19 on?
Oh, yeah.
Those little pipes they put into your neck. He was on one of those kind of devices. This is a child, like 4 years old. Because the Israelis turned off the power, because they control the electricity that comes into the Gaza Strip, they turned it off. Remember what the Gallant said, there's going to be no electricity, no food, no nothing, for you Palestinians. That means that child, as of last night, no longer had a respirator. That child is probably dead now, because the reason why they had the respirator was to stay alive. If you take the respirator off of this child, the child dies. That child by now, as we're speaking right now, is probably dead. Who's speaking up for that child? Who do we hear in the American media speaking up for that child? Do you know what the Israeli ambassador said when or whoever it was they were interviewing said about that? He says, "Well, I'm not interested in that. How can you be talking about Palestinians when these Palestinians did all of these horrible things to Israelis?"
Yeah, just real.
Israelis have been doing this to these Palestinians for 75 years.
Yeah. And what I was about to just expound real quick, the American media, they basically only speak, on what the Palestinians are doing, to the Israelis.
Yep.
They don't go the other way around. It's being
See, what happens is if you don't judge crime as crime, call it out for what it is, and then address it for what it actually is. If you don't do that, then the next day after the crime is committed and you didn't do anything about it, you didn't speak honestly to it, that crime becomes the precedent the following day. So if today is Friday and on Thursday, yesterday, you robbed 5 banks, and killed 16 people while you did it, and nobody said anything about it. They just said, well, it's rough, man need a little bit of money, and let it go. Then today being Friday, I can say, well, I should rob 6 more banks. Because if you didn't say it was wrong yesterday, then it can't be wrong today. That's what's going on right now. This has been going on for decades in this world. And that's what we have to really combat. And I know it's hard. It means that some of your friends ain't going to be your friends anymore. People that act like they like you, not going to like you anymore. No, because I'm with the Israelis. I'm with the Palestinians. I'm this, I'm that. You got to be with right and wrong.
Yeah.
That's all you can be with. You can't be with somebody's claimed identity. You have to be with right and wrong. And if you're not smart enough to know that killing people is wrong, raping people is wrong, robbing people is wrong, stealing from people is wrong, if you're not smart enough to know that, you should suffer whatever the criminal penalties are when you get caught. That's the way that needs to get done.
Well, that's how come I'm really not understanding how a vast percentage of people in the United States are going with Trump. It's about right and wrong.
Thank you.
How in the heck can you even follow that?
Now, Willie says you're stealing some of the time from our sponsors, so we got to take a quick minute and talk to our sponsors. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to talking on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host. We're here with Norm McCarter, who is the citizens representative here in our in-studio audience of one. Welcome, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare.
And we're also here with Willie H., who is our IT director, who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here.
So hopefully I haven't driven you all away with I know y'all think I'm anti-something. I'm really not anti-anything except crime. I'm anti-crime. I'm anti-people murdering other people. That's what I'm anti. I went to an article written by Alice Spurl. It was in the online magazine called The Intercept. And she was just making some prescient points that I thought are similar to what we're talking about right now. She said last year Russia staged a full-scale invasion of the Ukraine. We're all familiar with that. And she said many pointed to the impunity for war crimes that were committed by Syria. Remember, Syria was invaded by the United States for crimes that were being committed by Prime Minister Abbas in Syria. We have hundreds of thousands of Syrian people that were driven from their homes, that were murdered, raped, lost their feet, their hands at the hands of the Abbas government. Elsewhere in the world, she talks about the lack of accountability directly enabled similar crimes to be committed in the Ukraine. That the Russians, the very thing we're talking about, what the Hamas people were doing to the Israelis that were living in that border area with Gaza, the very things we're saying that we object to, that we're all animatedly upset and want to go to war over, the Russians were doing the same things to the Ukrainians. They were killing people, chopping off people's heads, raping people, putting poles in people's behinds. I mean, they were doing things that you just could not imagine somebody would do to another human being. The Russians were doing this and laughing about it as they were doing it. Where's the international uproar over that? Why is it it's only when it's this Israeli-Palestinian thing, whites and not so white people? Why is it when it's that kind of thing, everybody's got their mouths out, in the game, got something to say?
Question, Mr. Hare. Palestinian, are they people of color, or both Israel and Palestine are people of color?
Well, it's hard to put a frame on that. The Palestinians are similar people to the Arab people. So how you feel about Arab people as to whether they're people of color, that's what you'd feel about the Palestinians.
Right.
From my point of view, people who are the folks that you traditionally think of as white people, that population of people looks at Arab people as people of color.
Right.
Most black people look at Arab people as people of color.
Right.
So they may be light-skinned, but they're not white-skinned.
Right.
And so they're looked at as people of color.
And the Israelites, they're all some white skin.
Now, the Israelites used to be people of color.
Right. Oh, they
But
used to.
when they got deported into Iran and into Germany and these other places, you become who you sleep with.
Right.
So, when you get migrated out to other places and you start sleeping with other people, you start looking like the other people.
Right.
So that all began 2,800 years ago. So today, they don't look as dark today as they did yesterday.
That's why the U.S. and maybe others value Israel, because they look the ones that the power.
I don't think it's quite that. I think it's more complex than that. I think the United States looks at Israel as a base in Africa.
Okay.
That gives them a base they can operate from as a sphere of influence in Africa. It's easier to operate from a space that you live in than to operate from a space far away.
Right.
So I think that's what their thing is. From a sort of a general philosophical framework, I think that most European Caucasian people have a certain amount of guilt that they feel about how the Jewish people have been treated in this world.
Gotcha.
Remember we talked about this a couple of weeks ago? The reality is what we refer to as anti-Semitism, which used to cover anybody that was a Semitic-speaking person, any Lebanese or, Yemeni or whatever, they were all considered to be Semites. Somehow the Israelis have seized this word and made it mean anti-Jewish. But it seems to me if you're anti-Jewish, you would just say you're anti-Jewish, not anti-Semite. But that's another story. The point I'm making is that anti-Semitism was as prevalent in the United States in the 1930s as it was in Germany, in Poland, in Austria, and all these other places and whatnot. Anti-Semitism was the coin of the realm everywhere outside of the Asian, or the East Asian continent. Anti-Semitism was the deal. And why was anti-Semitism the deal? It's a cultural phenomenon. As the Roman Empire became Christianized, then the Roman Caesar began to use or treat Christianity as the state religion of Rome. So if you were not with the state religion, you were not with Rome. So you got attacked for not being in the state religion. And what justified the attack? It was the Jews who killed the Christ. Now, we've talked about this before, right?
Yeah.
We're clear now.
Okay.
Pontius Pilate was not a Jew. Are we clear about this?
Oh, no, I knew that.
Okay.
I knew that.
He was a Roman.
Yeah, I knew that.
He's the one who washed his hands and said, I'm washing my hands of this, as he co-signed when they said, give us Barabbas or give us the Christ. The Christ is giving you life and life more abundantly. Barabbas is a thief, and you chose the thief.
Right.
over the Christ. Now everybody has to bear that responsibility, has to bear that guilt. So it became a cultural phenomenon in the Roman world to treat the Jews as if they were the murderers of the Christ. And so this became an ingrained kind of a concept.
And it's taught that way too. Even when you go to church, it's taught that way.
Right. Now, so I'm just saying this to help us to understand how all of this anti-Semitism comes about, right? But the reality is that the United States, along with all these other countries, they co-signed the behaviors that were being inflicted upon the Jewish people. So I understand why they were willing to find some place in the world and make that the Israeli homeland and give them some place to go. I understand all of that. I'm not objecting to that.
Right.
I'm only saying, as an objective reality, that the Palestinians were not the ones who did this to the Jewish people. The Palestinians were just making wine and dates and palm trees and whatever it is that they do in Palestine. That's what they were doing, minding their own business. They were not waging war against Israel. The United States and its allies decided to take Palestine and give half of it to Israel, assuming that they were going to be able to create a Palestinian state in the other half of Palestine, that the Palestinian people were going to go for it. But you have to remember, these ethnic Palestinians are just like ethnic people in Africa. If your great-great-great-grandfather was buried in this cemetery, you wouldn't be too cool about somebody coming and saying, well, I noticed your great-great-grandfather was buried in the cemetery, but I'm taking it over and I'm putting a beer factory, where your cemetery used to be. You wouldn't go for that. You would fight people over that. That's what the Palestinians are fighting for right now. This was our land. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, some of these people's fathers are still alive who used to live in that land. Not dissimilar to Mexico. Remember, we keep hearing about these Mexican people migrating across the border like they're interlopers? Texas was a part of Mexico. California was a part of Mexico.
Wow.
New Mexico was a part of Mexico.
And that's why you got a lot of Mexican in those countries.
Come on. That's the reality, right?
Okay.
You got people whose grandparents lived in Mexico when Sacramento hadn't even become a city yet, right? These people have a aboriginal relationship to those southwestern lands of the United States. These Mexicans have an aboriginal relationship to those lands. So if they walk around here with their mouths poked out and got something to say about, you living in Dallas or, you living in some town in New Mexico, acting like it's your American territory, you can't have your mouth too poked out about Mexicans who think that that's still a part of Mexico, right? You just conquered Mexico and took that land. That's the way the Palestinians see it. They were just conquered by the Allied powers who took their land. So from my point of view, politically, I have to look at this as a lived reality. This is the reality that we are living in right now. I can't change what was done in 1948. Maybe you can argue that I should change it, but I personally don't have the ability to change it. I don't know any grouping of people in America who have the power to change it. It has been done. All you can do now is try to find a way to help people live quality lives now.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
Right.
Okay? But I'm not looking at it from the way that the Israelis look at it. Oh, this is our promised land. This is our Aboriginal land. We come from here. No, you didn't. Stop lying. Your own text. The Bible says I believe it's in the book of Ezekiel. I don't want to make the wrong
reference
book or chapter in that book. I think it was chapter 14, somewhere around verse 7 or 8. It says that thy mother was an Amorite, thy father was a Hittite. This is the one God speaking through the voice of Ezekiel to the Israelite people. Thy mother was an Amorite. Thy father was a Hittite. In other words, you are people who came from other places into the promised land. You were not birthed in the promised land. You are not aborigines in the promised land. you were Aborigines in southeastern Europe or southwestern Asia, but you were not Aborigines in Palestine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if we would stop lying and start dealing around frameworks of truth, it becomes easier for you to accept. Not that you're going to viscerally accept everything, but it becomes easier to accept things if you operate on the basis of truth. Truth tells me that Palestine was conquered by the Allied powers, and they gave half of the land to the Jewish people. That's the truth. It may not be pretty. There may be people who want to act like, oh, no, it's not what happened. The Palestine just fell into our laps. We were walking down the street. You remember the guy that was walking down the street? He walked up under the tree, and Palestine just fell on his shoulders. Man, look at this. There's Palestine. See, but that's not what happened. You took Palestine from people who lived in Palestine. That's what happened. If you speak truth, then you can say, okay, we accept that that's what we did 75 years ago. We accept that. That's truth. What do we do now? I'm not giving up, Israel. I'm not going to make Israel cease to exist. Israel now exists. So what do we do?
Make reparations.
Right? See, and so to make reparations means that all that whining about, well, this is our land and we lived in the land, you got to let that go. You can write in your history books, we used to live in Israel, but you don't live here anymore, okay? Period. You just have to accept that, right? And you got to move forward based on that. That's what we need our political people to do now. That's what we need our citizens to do now. Stop regurgitating patent lies and start speaking truth. If you speak truth, truth will produce more truth. Lies will only produce more lies. That's the way I think that we have to go. So I think I've beaten this, pretty much to death. We haven't talked, much about in Trump. In Trump we trust. That was my second half of today's program. This article was written by Matthew Chapman. Trump tells the court that he has no duty to support the Constitution as president. Wow. I don't know if you heard me. Let me just play that out for you again. This is the title of the article by Matthew Chapman. This is in the online magazine called Raw Story. It was just a couple of days ago, October 11th, that this was published. Its title was Trump Tells Court He Had No Duty to Support the Constitution as President. You were the President of the United States, and your mouth is saying that you did not have a duty to support the Constitution of the country that you claim you were the President of.
Didn't he take an oath or something like that, Mr. Ayers?
He said the oath didn't say he had to support the Constitution. Let me read this to you. This is just so crazy. Former President Donald Trump argues to a judge in Colorado that he was not required to support the Constitution as President of the United States. In an argument, he seeks to dismiss a lawsuit filed by the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. The insurrection clause that's based on the 14th Amendment, the insurrection clause, which prohibits those who have engaged in insurrection against the United States from holding a civil, military, or elected office unless two-thirds majority of the House and Senate approve. But Trump's lawyers are arguing that the specific language of the Constitution requires that this requirement only applies to people in offices who are bound to support the Constitution. And the presidency is not one of those offices. Now, who is asserting that there is an office that exists in the United States that does not require you to support the Constitution of the United States? Who is saying that? That's what Trump's lawyers are saying. He says this is the first time we have been informed that Donald Trump, while President of the United States, was not bound by the Constitution and submitted to the Constitution. That's why Trump acts like he does, because he says, I'm not bound by the Constitution. I'm just elected to rule over you people. but I'm not bound by the Constitution of you people.
I think that's the only thing he understands.
Yep.
I rule over all of you guys.
He says the presidential oath requires the president to swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
Yep.
But it does not require the president to support the Constitution. The words support the Constitution are not in the Constitution. The word support isn't there. The words preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution are there, but they didn't include the word support. That's the lawyers of Donald Trump.
Wow.
How you keep your law license with your mouth saying stuff like that, I do not know. How you escape the court without somebody punching you in the face, I do not know, right? But that's what's going on right now. He says that this is the lawyers now. They say because the framers of the Constitution chose to define the group of people subject to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment by an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and not by an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, the framers of the 14th Amendment never intended for it to apply to the president. That is just insane, an insanely stupid assertion. So other lawsuits are trying to disqualify Trump on the same grounds. We won't go through all the other lawsuits. They're saying basically the same thing. Ariba Shah wrote an article for Salon magazine stating that legal experts are looking at Jack Smith's filing blowing a big hole in Donald Trump's election interference defense. Prosecutors requested that a judge compel Donald Trump to disclose whether he plans to mount a defense centered on blaming his lawyers for giving him poor legal advice. Now, you just heard what I told you the lawyers of Donald Trump were saying, right?
Yeah.
If that's your lawyer, the lawyer who thinks that people that were hired by the people of the United States to preserve, protect, and defend the United States were not bound to support the Constitution of the United States, why would you allow these people to be lawyers in the first place?
Yeah,
Right?
it don't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. So they call this this defense the advice of counsel defense. Essentially, it's saying that if your lawyers were knuckleheads and you can prove that your lawyers were knuckleheads and that you had followed the advice of a knucklehead, that you should not be bound by any action you took following the advice of knuckleheads. That's just dumb, right? Doesn't the law say that ignorance of the law is no excuse? You are still bound by the law.
Right.
You know, if I walk into a bank and I see all this money, man, it's money, money, money. That looks just like my money. You got a face on it? My money got face on it. It's green. My money's green. That must be my money. So I start walking behind the counter and taking the money and putting it in my pockets and whatnot. Then you arrest me and say, why did you do that, Nate? I said, because I thought that was my money. You said, well, Nate, what would make you think it was my money, your money? I said, well, it was green and it had faces on it. It looked just like my money. I mean, that's a silly analogy, but that's not as silly as the analogy that these people are making.
It sounds like something Trump would say.
Exactly.
It really does.
Exactly. So the formal order would force Trump to tell them his plans by mid-December, thereby preventing any disruption of the pretrial schedule and a delay of the trial. This Judge Tanya Chutkan is not playing. Everything she sees Trump's lawyers doing to try to create, she knows that Trump's lawyers know that what they're saying is just nonsense. They just know that if they do it, then there has to be a hearing on the motion. That takes a couple of weeks. Then you have to have the trial on the hearing. That takes a week. Mm-hmm. Then it takes some time for the judge to write an opinion. There's another week. So now you've taken up almost a week and a half, and you just keep doing this over and over and over again. Before you know it, it's December of 2024.
Yeah.
That's really what Trump is trying to get done. So if Trump opts for the advice of counsel defense, he would waive his attorney-client privilege, which I don't think Trump would be smart to do, requiring him to share all communications or evidence related to his defense team. Such defense is completely untenable, given Trump's statements and actions that show that Trump himself made all the critical decisions relating to subverting the 2020 election results. by raising such a defense, Trump would automatically forfeit any reliance on attorney-client privilege, thereby freeing lawyers and other persons to testify about conversations that they had had with Donald Trump. The reason why this is important is Trump can't play the game two ways. If Trump is going to argue that the reason why I did all of these things to try to overturn the election is because my lawyer said it was okay for me to do it, then he's relying on the advice of the lawyers. That would force the prosecutors to prove that the lawyers were not knuckleheads. But if the lawyers are saying things like, well, you know, the Constitution doesn't say you actually have to support the Constitution. The Constitution says you only have to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. So you weren't bound by that provision to support the Constitution of the United States, no matter what oath you took. So the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to you. So if the prosecutors are forced to argue that case, then they'd be saying that Donald Trump would be innocent on the basis that his lawyer's advice was crazy advice because the lawyers were crazy. Mm-hmm. But if he does that, in order to prove that, you'd have to open up all of the advice that you were given by these attorneys. So all the things the attorney said to you in confidence would no longer be in confidence. So when Trump is saying to his lawyers, I'm going to give $10,000 to this guy over here, you know, for him to give me access to the voting machines, you know, you couldn't say that that was attorney-client privilege that hides that information. All that stuff winds up having to be disclosed. So I don't think Donald Trump will do this, but I don't think Donald Trump is a terribly smart person. So he may do this, right? Trump is asserting that everything that his lawyers told him was that all the things he was doing were perfectly legal. The bottom line here is that the prosecutors will have significant investigation demands since so many documents now claimed as privilege will then become available for them to review. So I went to another article written by Philip, how do you say his name? Timotija. It was entitled "Lawmakers Applaud After Democrat Apologist for GOP Colleagues Outburst." This is in the Hill magazine. I just want to give you an idea of who the people are that we share government with. And I feel uncomfortable using that word "we," because it would imply that I'm including myself in the population of people that we share this government with. But I can't be with these people. We're not in league with each other. They're completely different, right? Let me give you what it says. Lawmakers applauded Representative Jason Crow, who's a Democrat from Colorado, after he apologized on behalf of all Congress members following GOP Congressperson Derek Van Orden's from Wisconsin, his latest outburst at a group of federal workers. Now, this is important because I want you to understand what this deep state stuff is that Donald Trump has sold his base on, the idea that the country is in the clutches of this deep state people and that they're bad guys. Crow apologized to the Biden administration briefers, people that briefed the Biden administration, during the Wisconsin lawmakers' questioning, which some described as rude and obnoxious, according to Judy Chu, who's a Democrat from California. Crow's office confirmed that his office apologized to these people that were briefing Congress. Van Orden, the Republican, called the White House briefers who were filling in lawmakers on attacks in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Van Orden called these briefers incompetent and told them that he knew more about the situation in Israel and Palestine than any of them knew about it, because his reason was, because I served 2 tours of duty in the Middle East. So because 10 years ago you served 2 years of duty in the Middle East, you know more about the Hamas-Israel conflict than the briefers from the U.S. State Department know about what's going on. That's what's the assertion. So Representative Dean Phillips, a Democrat of Minnesota, he yells out, "Shame on you," before Van Orden, the Republican, reacted to Phillips with, and I'm quoting the article, he reacted with an F-bomb. This is a guy, this is a congressperson. This is what I'm trying to help us to understand. This is a congressperson. He's talking like somebody who's as stupid as a rock, okay? Thinking that he knows more about, foreign policy than the people who actually are paid to brief you on foreign policy. You know more than they do. They're incompetent, and you're the competent person because 10 years ago you served 2 tours of duty in Iraq. That's dumb enough all by itself. Then you're the kind of person that in front of the entire Congress of the United States, you would call somebody the F word. I just don't understand this, right? But he ain't the only one. Margaret Taylor Greene has behaved like that. A few others have behaved like that. So anyway, that was a lead into another piece that I came across. Travis Geddes wrote an article in Raw Story about regretful Republicans looking back on their support from the party. And a conservative confidant of Senator Mitch McConnell expressed remorse for helping pave the way for evil Donald Trump. John David Deitch, a Louisville attorney and former Courier-Journal columnist, broke with the Republican Party over Trump, but he wrote an op-ed for the Kentucky Lantern newspaper apologizing for helping to create the conditions that allowed this reality TV star, Donald Trump, to arise to power. I know we got the music on, so let me just skip to a little bit of this. But he says that when Trump appeared on the political scene, he didn't take Trump seriously, which is what most people did at that time. And they expected the Republicans to repudiate him quickly. He was then, and is even more so now, the antithesis of actual principled conservatism. But to his dismay, William Bennett, in his book, The Book of Virtues, either openly embraced or tacitly collaborated with or timidly tolerated Donald Trump, who is a moral obscenity of a man who personified virtually every vice and normalized every vulgarity, from grab them by their pee to, I'm just reading the article, to liability for sexual assault, to business fraud and much more. We've seen all of that in Trump's resume.
Yeah.
And so Dice watched in horror as Republicans shrugged off their conservative principles on free trade, fiscal responsibility, constitutional order, and the rule of law, national security, and democracy itself in order to follow along with Trump's depravity. To stand with or silently tolerate Trump and Trumpism is to effectively support his bigotry, his criminality, his demagoguery, his despotism, his hate, his democracy, his ignorance, his indecency, his insurrection, his irrationality, his lying, his narcissism, his pro-fascism, his sacrilege, his sedition, his venality, his violence, and vulgarity in alphabetical order. That was the criticism that Deitch waged against Donald Trump. I thought that was so on point. I had to read that to you.
I like that.
Word for
I like
word.
that, Mr.
So listen, this is Friday, so we got the weekend in front of us. I know I had, rooted for Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills, and they didn't act like Bills on, that day. So that Monday. So we're hoping that we're going to recover our personality.
Little jet lag.
Something, right? But they got jet lag this week too because they had to go back. So hopefully this will all work itself out. We'll have a brighter Monday. But thank you all for having a great weekend, whatever it turns out to be. We'll see you all on Monday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM, WBNY. See you all then.
That's J1 Trey.